Hi guys, Rob here. I'm still learning to use my new mic, so please excuse me if you hear breathing sounds. Anyway, I want to tell you about what I think is the most important idea in internal alchemy, and maybe the most important idea in Daoism. That's the pre-heaven state. Another way to call it is Xian Tian Yi Qi, Hun Yuan Qi, Hundun. There's lots and lots of different names for it. Anyway, this idea is from the Tao Te Ching originally. In the Tao Te Ching, right, you have this idea that the Tao is intangible thing. It can't be sensed, it can't be grasped, there's no way to interact with it in the regular conscious plane. And so Taoist practice for 2,000 plus years has been really engaged with this idea of entering into the intangible aspect of our own existence. And that intangible aspect of our own existence isn't available to any of your senses, right? So if you imagine your senses conceived of as like your vision, your hearing, sense of smell, sense of taste, your tactile senses, etc., none of those things can grasp the Tao. The Tao is underneath that. It's at the core of our beings, right? It's what initiates reality, ergo it's what initiates us. So Taoists eventually came to the conception that basically yin and yang emerge out of the Tao together. In the Tao Te Ching, they're called Wu and Yo. Wu means non-being and Yo means being. But eventually they began to adopt more sort of concrete ideas about yin and yang in relation to the nature of the Tao. So the Tao creates both of these features, right? One is passive, neutral, unmoving. One is active, right? It's, let's say, has a tendency to scatter, and it's always moving. And so we're conceived of as being a combination of these two things, which essentially boil down to those things which are, let's say, material and stable, and those things which are active and unstable. But underneath all of that, from the perspective of Daoism, is Tao, and Tao itself only exists in emptiness. It exists in the extreme of non-being. It's not just non-being. It's non-being with no possibility of being. And that's the thing that creates the ability for reality to be generated. But it itself is always not able to be touched by anything in reality. It's like if you imagine that before the universe was created, if there was nothing there, an ultimate nothing, then after the universe was created, it wouldn't be possible for any of us to go back and look at that thing. Because if it predates any of our reality, there's no way that using our senses we could go back and look at something that doesn't exist, right? But at the same time, it's not the same kind of non-existence that we might think of as like it doesn't exist, therefore it doesn't matter, right? Because from the perspective of Taoism, the Tao is before all things. It's the thing that matters the most. So Taoist practice, ultimately, especially internal alchemy, is about reverting back to that state. But reverting back to that state, we can't do it through imagining it, right? You can't imagine qi and have that be the qi of the Tao. You can imagine qi and you can feel it, right? It's a real tactile sensation. Maybe it's created by your nerves, who knows? But the Tao qi is something you could only interact with by entering into this profound state of non-being, which is inaccessible to your senses. So that's what Neidan and other Taoist meditation styles like Zuowang, sitting and forgetting, primarily concern themselves with. So when you practice, you need to fix your mind somewhere that is deep and that allows the mind to become stabilized so that it doesn't bother you with its, talk and sensation and awareness of feelings and things like that. And then when you're in that state for long enough, in this sort of profound, dark, unclear, turbid, remote state, then the mind will revert back to a place of self-forgetting. So you forget your body, you forget your thoughts, you forget any conception of self, any sense of self at all is completely gone in that state. And the belief is that that state is what brings us to the Tao to be able to borrow from its energy again, and we can get that qi and it can regenerate some aspect of our energy. This is what it means to generate the medicinal product. This is what it means to have the potential to generate the golden elixir. This is what it means to have the ability to generate the sage fetus. All of these things come out from this Tao activity, moving qi in the body, which is tangible, which has a spiritual quality to it, and then reverting that qi back to the inner body, maintaining it there, and returning to the Tao state again to borrow from the energy again. If you can do this over and over again for a long period of time, then you'll transform yourself energetically, and you'll transform yourself spiritually, which is why it's the most important idea in Neidan practice, and maybe the most important idea in Daoism. So at the same time, that can't be without a technique. But I frequently have people coming to me, not my students all understand this, but I frequently have people coming to me from outside who read my Substack or, follow me in other places, and they say, yeah, I get it. This is similar to like the creative spark or something like this. Or this is similar to some eureka moment that you have, when you have suddenly get a notion that seems to come out of nowhere. But that's definitely not what it is. It's a very, very specific, in terms of meditation, it's a very specific meditation-related concept that requires you to completely abandon yourself. The problem is that a lot of the time people are just simply not able to let go of the intense need to maintain control with their minds. That's it. There's nothing that you can do about that. If a person is willing to let it go, they let it go, and the thing will happen spontaneously, and they will get a positive experience and they can build on it. If you can't let it go, you need to grasp with the mind. You need to have control of the situation. You need to feel like you know what's going on, and you need to, reify yourself, as my Buddhist friends would say. Then it's just completely impossible to do this. You better stick to Qigong, because you can control the Qi with your own mind in Qigong practice. But for Neidan, you have to let go of every aspect of yourself in the meditation state in order for it to be productive. But the benefit, the payoff of such a practice is that when you succeed, it will transform you into something that is infinitely better than what you were before. And the more that you do it and the more you're successful at it, the better the effect will become. So it's one of those things that it really is, it's a technique, but it's a technique where you have to forget technique. It's what makes it difficult to study Neidan, but at the same time, I think it's really worth it. I don't want to come on here and just say things which are exclusively nice for people to hear. I'm sure I'd make so much more money if I said things that were just exclusively nice for people to hear. But I want to tell you the truth, right? Practicing according to this method is a very particular thing. It's based on the Tao Te Ching. If you know how to read the Tao Te Ching properly, you can get the basic principles of internal alchemy, and then you just need somebody to guide you on the way to be able to practice. It's not that complicated, and then, ideally you have some friends or a teacher who can monitor your practice over time to make sure that you stay on the right path. But you do have to get the basic concept, and the most important one, reverting back to an original state of non-being that's productive of being. It's a real thing. It's physiological in nature. Nobody knows why it happens. The traditional explanation of it is related to the pre-heaven and the post-heaven and the Jingqi and Shen and all of these things. In a modern conception, we might relate it to the parasympathetic nervous system becoming more active or hormonal changes. Who knows? That's up for discussion. That's up for research. But the key point is that there's a mechanism. That's the mechanism by which the Tao creates reality, and it creates our energy in a small way, which can get bigger over time. Okay, I hope this video was useful to you. See you sometime.